Good evening. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint's vigil to honor the life of George Floyd and protest the violence against African Americans by police. George was known as Big Floyd to his friends and family, and he had moved from Texas to Minneapolis to find a better life. He advocated against gun violence and was a proponent of peace. He should be alive today. But his 26-year-old life was stopped because a white Minneapolis police officer's knee pinned down his neck until he could no longer breathe. That officer had 18 previous complaints filed against him before this incident. George's final words were, "I can't breathe." They were the same words that we heard from Eric Garner, who died after police officers in New York City put him in a chokehold while arresting him in 2014. George was being subdued for allegedly using a counterfeit $20 bill. Whether or not all of the officers involved in George's murder will be charged with such, the broader problem is implicit and explicit presumption of guilt based on race by law enforcement. Once again, we are all reminded that we are not part of a post-racial society. Some of you worked hard in the 1960s to end discrimination, and many accomplishments were won. Many believed the substantial work was done. Some still believe that Rodney King, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown and George Floyd are very tragic but isolated incidents. But most of us listening now have not lived the reality of Black America. Their voices have still not been heard enough. Tonight, you join majority white faith traditions in Unitarian Universalists. Although we are with the best intentions, we admit that we are still learning in this. We worship tonight to provide spiritual support to those communities resisting unaccountable authority and to offer any help and strength that we might provide. This evening, we mourn the death of George Floyd with his family, friends, and community, and with all people of this nation who speak up and stand up in the name of justice and compassion. Thank you for being with us. We begin this worship service with a prelude.
And now if you will join me for lighting your chalices. If we had the space, I would light 10,000, I would light 10 candles or 1,000. I would light a candle for George Floyd, brought down by police, left to die without comfort. I light a candle for all the Black children whose fathers have been taken too early from them. I light candles for the Black males who are killed every 28 hours in this country by law enforcement or vigilantes. I light candles for all the people whose lives are lived in fear, whose first instinct is to confront their neighbors. I light a candle for all those who are unable to see that institutional racism is part of what creates that fear. I light candles for our nation's hundreds of millions of candles, for those that have built walls which separate us. I light a candle for all those who are laboring to build a bridge across the separation and into other human hearts. I light a candle for all those who breathe in suffering and breathe out compassion. I light millions of candles in this one candle. May its light guide us in the days to come.
Let us be in an attitude of prayer and meditation. Spirit of justice and righteous anger, be with us. We seek to soften that anger, but soften it just enough so we do not commit acts of violence in word or deed. We ask that our careful anger empower our work to end the racism that took the life of George Floyd and the lives and honor and wealth and dignity of so many other African Americans. Empower our work to get cities everywhere to do anti-racism training with their police officers. This is still undone across our country. Empower our work to witness to others that on election day, they must vote for compassion and reason and science, not hatred and ignorance. May this spirit of justice and careful, righteous anger sustain us without leaving us bitter, for the nonviolent battle against racism that Dr. King started so long ago isn't over. The following words are those of the Reverend William Barber, founder of the Moral Monday protest movement. The fact is, we have this legitimate rage and outrage about the killing of African Americans, unarmed African Americans, by the police. It's not an anti-police position. It's actually a pro-police position, because bad cops make it bad for good cops, and good cops would be challenging the bad cops. From Moses to Jesus, the Bible tells us that those who fought for justice, those who spoke truth to power, those who refused to accept that injustice and inequality had to exist, and that there was no better way, they always found themselves hated, hounded, and heaped upon with false accusations. They were abused simply because they believed in the necessity of speaking and working for the cause of righteousness and building a more just community. This lack of majority support is why the just must live by faith and must know exactly who we are.
Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain.
Next up, the antivirus.
We will take this minute for a moment for meditation. It will be 1 full minute for you to choose where your thoughts go, for you to choose how you honor this moment and the actions we will take moving forward.
poem by Leslie Takahashi Morris. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single wall. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both, and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrums, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when all of us will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins can hold the center.
My reading is entitled Different Rules Apply, and it's a true story. I want to tell you a story about the difference between knowing and understanding. My 10-year-old son and I had just finished eating supper at a diner. The multiple TVs were showing cable news coverage of the Ferguson situation. On the way out, we passed an African-American mother talking to her son. The boy asked, "Should I just put my hands in the air?" "Yes," his mother said. "Just put your hands in the air." "If I put my hands in the air, will the police not shoot?" he asked. "Probably not, but you can't be sure. Some people say you should just kneel or lie down on the ground. Just get down on the ground." "If I lie down on the ground, they won't shoot." "Probably," she said. Recognizing the exhaustion in that probably, a parent trying to explain a fundamentally unfair fact of life in the most neutral terms possible, so that not only to make the child prematurely paranoid or cynical or bitter, and realizing that there are no words with which to do such a thing. I didn't truly understand the words white privilege, what they meant on a deep level, until one summer night in 2006, when I was spared an arrest, or worse, thanks to the color of my skin. The incident happened about 8 weeks after my wife's death. I was angry and I was drinking too much, and I went to a deli a couple of blocks away. Outside the deli, leaning against a payphone, was a Hispanic man in his late 20s or early 30s, insulting people as they passed by. His words were slightly slurred. When I came out of the deli, this man said something about my shoes and my hat. And because I was looking for a reason to hit somebody, I put my grocery bags down and confronted him. And then he poked me in the chest with his index finger. I knew the second he did it, he didn't actually mean to touch me, but I hit him in the face anyway. He stumbled backward, tripped, and fell face down on the sidewalk. I jumped on his back and put my forearm around his neck and locked it to keep him from getting up. I don't know how long I was down there, but it was long enough for the owner of the deli to call the police. 2 patrolmen got out of their squad car, pulled me off the guy, and tossed me onto the sidewalk. Then one of them ran over and put his knee on my back, but he didn't cuff me. And I looked over and I saw that the other guy was face down on the pavement, handcuffed. Both cops were white. The cop on me asked for my driver's license, looked at me, looked at him and said, "Tell me what happened." I told the cop what happened, and when he finished, he said, "Would you like to press charges?" "What for?" I asked. "Assault," he said. "Why would I press assault charges against him?" "Because he hit you first." I said, No, he didn't hit me first. He poked me in the chest." "That's assault," said the cop. "He hit you first." "I don't think he actually meant to touch me, though," I said. "It doesn't matter if he meant to touch you. He hit you first," the cop told me. He was talking to me warmly and patiently, as you might explain things to a child. "You were in fear for your life," he added. "Go home." I have no idea what ultimately happened to the other man. I went home, the other guy didn't. That's white privilege. The full truth must include the acknowledgement that if you're white, different rules apply.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that the tears have been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past, till we now stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weary God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our native land.
The following is taken from a speech delivered by the former mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu, in 2017, after the city had made the decision to take down all Confederate monuments from its public spaces. He said, "There's a difference between remembrance of history and reverence of it. We cannot be afraid of our truth. After the Civil War, these statues were part of the terrorism as much as burning crosses on someone's lawn. They were erected purposefully to send a strong message to all who walked in their shadows about who was still in charge of the city. Consider these 4 monuments from the perspective of an African-American mother or father today, trying to explain to their 5th grade daughter who Robert E. Lee is and why he stands atop of our beautiful city. Can you do it? Can you look into that young girl's eyes and convince her that Robert E. Lee is there to encourage her? Do you think she will feel inspired and hopeful by that story? Do these monuments help her see a future with limitless potential? This is about showing the whole world that we as a city and as a people are able to acknowledge, understand, reconcile, and most importantly, choose a better future for ourselves, making straight what has been crooked and making right what has been wrong. Otherwise, we will continue to pay a price with discord, with division, and yes, with violence. History cannot be changed. It cannot be moved like a statue. What is done is done. But centuries-old wounds are still raw because they never healed right in the first place. We will find a way to say, wait, not so fast. But like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, wait has almost always meant never. We can't wait any longer. We need to change. And we need to change now. This is not about statues. This is about our attitudes and our behavior as well. The message from King's 1965 address applies today as well. Let nobody give you the impression that the problem of racial injustice will work itself out. Let nobody give you the impression that only time will solve the problem. That is a myth. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, he said. And here we are today. We cannot merely hope that things will calm down. We can't rely on politicians or the conflicting groups to work it out. People like us will make changes for the good of this society, or nothing will change, and that is the truth, my friends. Putting our values to work starts with a deep understanding and acceptance that what affects one affects all. We are all responsible for fighting racism, even if we aren't in that particular demographic. The old wounds are still raw because they never healed right in the first place. Some Americans may say that they had nothing to do with slavery, segregation, or white supremacy, and they have no role in reconciliation. This attitude must change if we are to heal. No more sitting on our hands and saying, "This doesn't concern me." It starts with simple things like supporting Black Lives Matter, listening deeply to those who are oppressed, and volunteering for nonprofits that advocate for the disenfranchised, and writing letters to people that affect policy. And although it is somewhat disheartening to think that we are still struggling with issues from 60 years ago, find comfort by the fact that we are on the side of justice and you are not alone. Our values are right and relevant in the world today. We are small, but we are mighty. As King said in 1965, we still have a long, long way to go, but at least we've made a creative beginning. He continued with these words from a slave preacher: "Lord, we ain't what we ought to be. We ain't what we want to be. We ain't what we're gonna be. But thank God we ain't what we was."
Our closing words are entitled, "The Other." If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us has changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters have many gifts to offer. So may you go forth from this evening, not who you were, but who you could be. So may we all.
For those of you who would like to continue a discussion, please contact your faith communities, or please join us for Sunday services at 10:30. You can find out more information about us at uuflint.org. And there are some organizations on your screen that you might want to contact about police brutality and other organizations that are fighting for racial justice. We thank you for joining us this evening.